Welcome to Full and Share Theology. We're your hosts, Justin Mercier and Bruce Pagano, and this is Theology for Everyone. All right, welcome back to Full and Share Theology. Justin Mercier here with Bruce Pagano, and today we are live on Instagram here, and we got Facebook up there.
Maybe Facebook will be.
Oh, it looks
live?
like it. Oh, yeah,
Yep,
I think so.
it's live,
All right.
look at that.
So we are live, and we are going to be taking your questions and talking about the book here, Three Commands. Really great book. We went through it over the last 10 or 11 podcasts here. Looks like on the Instagram here, my wife is there. Yep.
Our most loyal fan.
Yeah, exactly. So hello to my wife there. So we are, so we're just talking about, going through this book. So, as we're waiting for questions to roll in, did we get any text message questions?
We did not.
Okay.
We didn't.
All right.
So can I talk about what we're drinking?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's start with that.
So we're drinking. Remember when we had tomaten?
Yeah.
I think that was last week. It might have been last week. Maybe last week was Japanese.
Yeah.
Anyway, we had tomaten, which was a Highland single malt Scotch.
Right.
This is also a Highland single malt 12-year-old Scotch.
Okay.
So very similar flavor notes as tomaten. This is Aberfeldy. Aberfeldy's like 1889. It's been around since then. This is 12-year-old. I'm a tomaten loyalist.
Okay, yeah.
I love tomaten. But I think that this is kind of a smoother tomaten. And all single malt means, if you don't know, all single malt means is that it comes from the same distillery. So they can take from multiple casks inside the distillery.
Okay.
But unlike a blended, which comes from multiple distilleries, this is the same distillery. So
very nice.
That's what we're drinking.
Very good. Let's see. My wife. Yeah, my wife says loyal fan is right. Yep, that's right. And we should definitely be texting Kevin Schneider if he's not on yet, because
Kevin said he was going to tear us up.
He said he was bringing the heat. So let's see. We got some action over there on the Facebook. Although my eyesight's not very good. Oh, it's my wife again.
We're getting the commentary too.
All right, very good.
So
yeah,
you finished the book.
That's right. Yep.
Thoughts?
It was so good. What I really appreciated is, something that you said, obviously, very in the beginning, was this is your love letter to the church.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's very evident in the fact that that the book has this overall theme, which is love. Really, is really the main theme, and how it's not. We really kind of dissected that. It's not about keeping you in line. And it's not about rules and regulations, but it's about starting from a place of love and then taking it from there.
Right.
And even all the way through to that chapter 9, where it was like when we talked about the neighbor, who our neighbor was. It starts with love. And it ends with love, because God is both. Starts and begins with God. So, yeah.
Thanks, man. And so the conclusion. I started the introduction. I called my invitation.
Right.
And that was my invitation to join me in this journey of what it looks like to learn what it means to love each other and what it means to live inside. I heard this great thing this last week, and I was listening to a podcast. I think the guy's name is Michael Erie.
Okay.
I think it's Michael Erie, but it's the Vox podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And they've been talking through the Beatitudes.
Oh, yeah.
And and he was talking about how Jesus said, "I did not come to abolish the law, but I came to fulfill it."
Yep.
And so he kind of broke down the word abolish, the Greek word abolish that Jesus used, and the Greek word fulfill. And so abolish at that time, what Jesus would have meant in context was, I have come to undo wrong interpretation
Yeah.
and wrong action
Yeah.
as it applies to the law.
Right.
I've so where people misinterpret and misperform the law,
Yeah.
I've come to fulfill, which is provide right interpretation and right action for the law, right?
Yeah.
And so like automatically I was like, oh man. So that's what this has been talking about, where the old covenant is fulfilled in that Jesus provides the right understanding and right action associated with the two greatest commands of the old covenant, to love God and love your neighbor.
Right.
And that's done through understanding this thing that Jesus does, where he takes the law and then he makes it very explicit. In that podcast, he called it the highs and the lows, like the or the heavy and the light, So he takes the command not to murder, which is a heavy, and and says, yeah, but if you hate your neighbor,
right,
which would have been considered kind of a like, you'll be light in the kingdom, like but you'll be heavy in the kingdom, like you'll be of importance in the kingdom if you understand these things, right?
Yeah.
And so this is like, we practice loving each other so that we can live more fully in what it means to love God and love our neighbor. Like, we get to experience that. And so the conclusion, I titled His Invitation.
Right.
And the subtitle to it is Finding Love and Looking for Others. So when you find love, who is Jesus, it should compel you to go out and look for others. And then I quote Jesus saying, "Come and follow me, and I will transform you into men who catch people for God."
Yeah, fishers of men.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's all invitation. Like that is invitation. That's not forcing people into the kingdom, but inviting people into this good king's kingdom, where you get to experience love. And so it's only like a page and a half long.
Yeah.
But there's this one quote that I found right towards the end of writing this, that I'm going to butcher his name, but a guy by the name of Nabil Qureshi, who wrote Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus, a devout Muslim encounters Christianity. He wrote this, and this is what I think kind of sums up. It's this critical question that we have to ask ourselves.
Yeah.
After loving us with the most humble life and the most horrific death, Jesus told us, "As I have loved you, go and love one another." How could I consider myself a follower of Jesus if I was not willing to live as he lived, to die as he died, to love the unloved and give hope to the hopeless? And that's it.
Yeah.
And that's this. How can we do that?
Right.
And in the end, there's only 3 commands. And it's to love each other, to love God, and to love your neighbor. And that's it.
Yeah.
Love.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I definitely appreciate that, because like you said, this is, this is a leveler for Christians and for the church. And it's like, it doesn't stop, on chapter 9.
Right.
There's another chapter, which is kind of like what we talked about, even with our spiritual lives, is that we go from being the baby Christians of, milk to we need to start getting into the next phase, which is the meat and potatoes. And that's what I really appreciate about that chapter 10 is like, here's the next step of really understanding God's love. And that is go and invite others to love. And so awesome. Yeah.
So
very good.
That's the book.
Yeah.
There will be others, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. Part 2. Yeah.
I think the next thing that I've been working on that I'm hoping maybe next year, is on mercy.
Mercy.
And, primarily walking through the Good Samaritan and paralleling that with the prodigal son and the 99 and the 1.
Wow. Yeah. that'd be great. That'd be a great addition to this. Cool. Well, we made it through the book, and that's just an accomplishment. I mean, for me, like I said, this year is like the most books I've ever read, and I got to go through one with you, which was awesome. Which is your book, like, and so that was really good. And so let's see. I'm just looking to see.
It's all Jessica all the time.
Is it all Jessica so far?
Yep.
All right. I saw some.
Missy Burton.
Okay. Yep. That's my mother-in-law.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep. So that's.
Can we wave?
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we can wave on the phone there. So, and even today we both wore our Folding Chair Theology shirts. Yep. And so, they're at the low price of $99.99.
Right.
So,
yeah. We're not trying to make money.
No, that's just what it costs, you know.
Want a hundo?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, she says hello. So awesome, very good. So we got to be at the men's breakfast this weekend.
Yep.
So now I got to be more of the behind the scenes. I got to do a bunch of cooking and that sort of thing. Tell me your experience from the other side of the enjoying and eating part.
Oh yeah. I appreciate any time that anybody cooks food for me.
Yeah.
What we had pancakes and bacon and sausage.
Yes.
And our friend James Stacy.
Yep.
Dude, like, kind of went all in on the toppings for the.
Amazing.
He like whipped butter and he whipped cream and he like had fruit and hot syrup and it was legit. And like healthy peanut butter, like it wasn't regular peanut butter. I think it was like it looked like healthy peanut butter. If peanut butter can be healthy.
Yeah, sure.
And I think it was good. Like I always enjoy getting together for men's breakfast and stuff. I always enjoy the possibility of what comes out of that. So like just being able to connect with other guys and guys that are like, hey, I want to be able to meet and have coffee or attend a group. We have a men's retreat. I used to be on staff at a church that didn't call them retreats. We called them men's advances.
Oh,
because we don't retreat.
Or men's musters.
So like we advance for the kingdom. Like
we don't retreat.
We don't retreat. Yeah. But we got a retreat coming up next month, which is cool out of this and it's kind of it's camping. I mean, there'll be some guys that are sleeping in tents and trailers, and I have a bed in the cabin.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So it was good. No, it was. Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. And you had a devotional. Is that what you would a sermonette?
Yeah, like a little sermonette,
a mini sermon.
Yeah, it was really good. You know what? So John. I guess could be considered kind of the leader of the men's groups. John knows I enjoy cooking for people and that sort of thing, and he said like, "Hey, do you want to put on the breakfast?" And I was like, "Absolutely." Same thing with the men's adventure is what I called it, but for the men's adventure, I'll also be like cooking for that too. So it's just breakfast was just a precursor, you know. But so I said, great. So James Stacy was like, I'm super interested in helping cook and that sort of thing. And I was like, awesome. What do you think we should do? And then that's when we came up with the idea of the fruit and we homemade that.
Just FYI, next time, if you need someone flipping pancakes, I make mean pancakes.
Okay.
Just the time, like I have the timing down that they're golden. Anyway.
Dude, it was. I know it got crazy there for a second, but so what I did is when I went shopping, I was like, I want to get because bacon's like a big deal, right? Like, bacon's
for a lot of people.
Bacon's like a big deal for a lot of people, and and now they have the bacon diet, which is the keto diet, you know. So,
which is science,
absolutely.
And so,
and so I was like, you know what? I want to make sure that I have like legendary bacon at this men's breakfast. So I went to like the back area, and it was peppered bacon and applewood smoked bacon, and it was thick.
Was it uncured?
I don't know.
You got to check if it's uncured.
I don't know. All I know is that when I got the packaging, it was like
You're
super
almost
thick.
there. You're
I
almost
know,
there.
right? It might have been. I know.
So close.
But I was like, oh, this would be great. Well, then I didn't realize that like even on a giant sheet, like a baking sheet, you can only fit like 10 pieces of bacon.
Right.
I bought like 5 pounds of bacon, and so I was like really worried. So we got all 5 griddles going, and we had a bunch of guys cooking extra bacon because it was But so sermonette, right? So John said, hey, and this is definitely not bragging on myself, but he's like, Justin, you're probably one of the most connected guys in our church that I know of. Like, you just know everybody. And that's usually because I'm talking all the time. But he's like, you know everybody. Why don't you share like a little 5-minute sermonette about like how you accomplish it, like how you connect with other men, that sort of thing. And obviously, reading this book was a huge help with that as well. But my little 5-minute sermonette, which I can recap, for
we got time.
We got time.
We got time.
So the whole premise was this: is that when we look at, and I'll expand a little bit, but when we look at men's groups in general,
and really, this is like it wasn't for you. It was specific to men's groups, especially since you were speaking at a men's breakfast,
right?
But it's not.
Yeah.
Exclusive to men's group.
No,
it's in general. Like that's what I took away the most was it's a good practice. Like I love the way you ended it with the little practical thing you gave, and I'll comment on that when you share it.
Yeah.
But it's something that is practical across the spectrum, throughout the body.
Absolutely.
It's not a men's thing.
Yeah. No, 100%. So the whole premise is this: is that so when we look at groups in general, so men's groups, women's groups, family groups, that sort of thing, what tends to seem to have happened in the past, or like when growing up in church, is you get into different cliques a lot of times in the church. It's you have the same 4 people, and it's just your little group. You don't let anybody else in. You don't reach out to anybody else, and it's just, and that's it, and that sort of thing. And one of the things that we've talked about, especially in your book here, is that it's much more. It goes deeper than that.
Right.
That little group that you do have is very important as far as like a home group, like we've talked about. But it extends past that. It's the fact that like our home groups are saved Christians, and we talk about how to solve the world's problems, and we invest in each other's lives. But the next step is loving others where they're at, and then inviting them into groups.
And it's the difference between gospel-centered community and gospel-centered missional community.
Right.
Like that missional piece is the thing that really makes you or puts you in line with what Jesus said. Like Jesus said, go make disciples of all nations, right?
Yeah.
And so if his mission was to come and seek and save the lost.
Yeah. Right.
Your groups... That's fine and well,
right?
But how are you moving into mission? I used to the cliques thing really used to frustrate me,
right?
And I realized a few years ago that what I was seeing most of the time in church was community, not cliques, and I looked at it as cliques because I didn't have community, and so that puts some onus on the person that views it that way. To go out and find community, and if you're a new Christian, that's really hard,
right?
To just be like, hey, I want to be a part of this thing that you have going on,
yeah.
But it should at least, on some level, be a revelation of, man, maybe they're really good friends, and they've cultivated that over time,
right?
And maybe they are people that invite people in, and I want that because that's really what's happening in you is when you look at something, you're like, they're just a bunch of cliques. They're such a cliquey church, and I've said that before. Really, what's going on probably is I want to be a part of that,
right?
And I'm not.
You're right. You're right.
And if you put yourself out there, now, good Christians should be inviting.
Right.
hospitable, right?
Absolutely.
But we're human, and we miss that sometimes.
Yeah.
If you go up and you're like, hey, I want to be a part of this thing, and they're like, oh, we don't have room for you,
Right.
then there's an issue.
Yes.
Maybe a cliquey church.
Yeah.
But maybe what you're seeing isn't a clique and is community.
Yeah.
So
No, absolutely. And, here's what I found so interesting as well. So as I was studying Job, here's something that was really interesting about Job. So Job, in his prime, before everything happened, it says that when he would walk into a room, people would stand up. I mean, out of respect for him. I mean, we're talking about the wealthiest man in the land, the most blameless man in the land, the one who has, 5 sons and 3 daughters and a wife, like has more. I mean, this guy was esteemed, right? Big time. Mm-hmm. His fall happens, right? Not because of his own doing, but Satan touches his life and everything goes, to what? And
to that word.
Yeah. And here's the interesting thing is that no one else is around except these 3 dudes that show up, right? And these 3 guys show up and they
there's not a real clear understanding that how much they're around before all this goes down. You know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly.
And then it crashes.
Right.
And then they're there.
All of a sudden they're
the
there.
whole time.
Yes.
Like they don't leave.
And the whole time they are berating Job. I mean, they're using mysticism, historical education. I mean, dogmatism, and they're like really jumping at Job's throat here, and Job is like trying to defend himself, right? And what I said in my little sermonette there was, what they're saying, these 3 dudes, what they're saying at face value, if you were to read it, if you didn't know the story and you were just reading what they were saying, you're like, yep, like that
sounds legitimate.
That's some good stuff. That's some deep stuff. Right. And so it's not until the very end when God finally answers Job. And God doesn't answer Job directly. He asks him 77 questions and goes, really? So you know how this works? And you know how the stars work and how the animals work and all that stuff?
I think we talked about this before because you brought it up. And he starts it with brace yourself like a man.
Yep.
I'm about to ask you questions now.
Exactly. I'm about to question you. You want to question me. I'm God Almighty. I'm going to question you. And so, and then God says, at the end of it, God says, those 3 wise men or friends, whoever they are, they're wrong in what they're saying to you. Right. The key thing, because what they were saying was not in love. It was all mysticism and haughty and like showing off how much you know. And interesting fact, which you see right at the end of the book here, when God restores all of Job's stuff back to him, guess who shows up? All of his friends and all the people. And it says they gave him rings and gold and robes and silver and all that kind of stuff. But it was after he got everything back from God. Right. Interesting how that works, right? Yeah. He has all these people who love him. He falls. They ain't around. Right. And then all of a sudden he becomes wealthy again. Oh, they're coming right back. Right. Even his wife shows up again, and they have more kids. So they must have worked it out. I mean, I don't know.
Maybe Job was just a super forgiving guy. Maybe that encounter with God was like,
oh. Yeah, right. But the point of it is, and this is why I was sharing my sermonette, is that it's not about what you know. Or I'm sorry, people don't care about what you know until they know that you care. Yeah. That's the big thing is that we come across people and we understand, like, when people come to church, usually for the first time, it's usually with a mask because there's a negative connotation with church. Yeah.
Not a COVID mask.
Not
a metaphorical mask.
You're right. I should definitely.
I'm sorry. That. Like, it sucks that we're in a season where we have to clarify that. Right. Not a real mask. A metaphorical
mask. Yeah. And they have this metaphorical mask, and a lot of times these masks look like intelligence, dogmatism, put together, that sort of thing. And they come, and it makes sense because what it is that they're not ready to be vulnerable yet.
Right.
And so
Safety.
it makes
It's
sense.
defense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I can show you how much I know and that sort of thing, maybe you won't like question me or whatever about whatever I'm struggling with. Shouldn't normally, I mean, anyway,
Right.
but, and so, so the whole point of it was like when we invite people into this missional community or we invite people into a relationship, it's with the fact of like, you understand that they're wearing a mask. They're not really telling you who they are, but they're trying to impress you almost. And then just to be like willing just to listen to them and hear them out. And then when they actually do become vulnerable and that sort of thing, that's when you start really building that relationship. And the way you do that, and this is what I kind of said, was a 5-5-55 rule, right? So it's 5 seconds. You're just, 3 times a week, let's say like a doctor, right? 3 days a week, 7 days a week. And you just, for 5 seconds, you just pray for somebody. Hey, Lord, bless, Mike Evans today or whatever. And it starts there because there's a heart thing that happens when you start blessing other people, because we're so in tune to being like, Lord, take my problems away, but we don't ever really ask for blessings for other people. Right. And so it starts with that. It starts with like, let's take 5 seconds just to ask for blessing for another brother or sister in the church or family in the church. Then it starts with a 5 minutes. This just is like, man, 5 minutes of your lunch break, your break or whatever, and just call somebody, call a brother or sister and just say, hey, I'm thinking about you. How you doing today?
Right.
And again, at first they might be wearing a mask and they won't share who they are. But you do that enough times over the next few weeks, then they start seeing that you care. And then the last is the 55-minute one, which is when someone says, hey, Scott, is moving in a week or two. You can go, yeah, sign me up. I'll dedicate an hour of my time or 55 minutes of my time. Right. I'll dedicate it. Or if someone's like, hey, bro, do you want to go out to coffee? Sure, let's do it. When do you want to do it? Wednesday? Cool. I'm going to spend 55 minutes with you. We're going to grab coffee. And it's about them. So it's like, tell me about yourself. Tell me about how you met your wife. Tell me about, what you're studying in the Bible. And they will tell you, I'm not saying anything in the Bible and that sort of thing. Oh, yeah, tell me about what is your experience about the Bible and that sort of thing. And then, again, that just fosters a community and a culture of showing people that you care, because then they'll come to you and they want to know what you know. And that's when you can start going on. So you had a comment about it.
No, yeah. So I thought it was really good. I actually felt convicted because I'm really good at the 55 thing. Yeah. Like I'm really good at the, oh, man, I'll be there to help. Like a call goes out to help people move. Someone needs to get coffee. Someone needs lunch. I'm really, I'll do that all day. The 5 second thing, I have a list of people that I pray for, but I'm fairly inconsistent. But at that 5 minutes, like I'm just not good at it. Like I probably inundate myself with so much stuff that it doesn't even come up in my mind where I'm like, oh, I should reach out. And then when it does, I'm like, oh, I should reach out to so-and-so. Okay. It's usually when I'm doing something else and I'm like, oh, I'll do that right after. And then I forget or something else comes up. And so I'd really like over the last couple of days, I've been trying to figure out like, okay, so what does 5 minutes look like for me? Like, what's it look like? So it was really good. I think it's a simple, practical, very alliterated and sequential 5-5-55 process that's super easy for anyone to do. And I mean, just even if you don't call them, but just a text to someone is a huge deal.
Absolutely.
So
no, absolutely. That's that's the big thing about it is, and that's what your book portrays so well, I think, is like, it's just about like what that looks like. And that's like, the whole purpose of like our walk as Christians is really to, as much as we can, to really try to pour out God's love from our heart to other Christians, not Christians. Like, I mean,
and if like the definition that I use for love in here is the accurate estimation of another's needs or the accurate estimate and adequate supply of another person's needs without expectation.
Right.
How do you know what their needs are unless you're taking that 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Unless you're praying for them at the beginning of the day and then reaching out to them and being like, hey, how you doing, buddy? And
Yeah.
I mean, you called me last week after my sleep study,
Yeah.
last Tuesday or last Friday. It was Friday.
Yeah.
I had a sleep study and called me. I was just like, oh, hey, what's up, man? Like, how'd your sleep study go? How you doing, man? Like, you need anything? I was just like, oh, man, like, it was really nice.
Yeah.
And we know each other, like,
Yeah.
so just, but how do you know unless
Yeah.
you ask,
Right.
or provide the opportunity for them to tell you? And that 5 minutes and that 55 minutes are really important keys to, oh, man, I just spent an hour with you, and I heard this need, or you shared this need, and I have the ability to fulfill, to meet that need, or at the very least, I can contact people who might be able to meet that need. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've even had like, I've had a few guys come up to me and they've asked me. I don't know. Maybe it's just the way I look or something, but they were like, "Hey, are you a gamer?" And I'm like, no, I don't own anything. Like, like I have a work computer, which I can't game on that, and then I don't have any like PSs or
Right.
Xbox or nothing. So I'm like, oh no, I'm not. But I'm like, are you a gamer? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, what do you play? And they're like, oh, I play Willer. And what I've realized is that there's like 4 guys in our church that are all gamers. And I don't think any of them know each other.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought about it on Saturday. So one of the guys at our church, his name is Chris. I texted out a bunch of people and I said, "Hey, is anyone looking for a job? There's a maintenance job at my apartment complex."
Right. Yep.
And he texted me and said, "Hey, my brother really needs a job. We've been praying for a job to come up, and he needs one. Reach out to him. His name is Phil." So I reached out to Phil and I was just like, "Hey, like I got this job." He's like, "Cool, send me the info, blah, blah, blah," that sort of thing. And every week I followed up with him. I don't know this guy at
Right.
all. I followed up with him and said, "Hey, did you hear anything?" He's like, "No." And I go back to my apartment complex. "Hey, what's going on?" And they're all sick and that sort of thing, and COVID or whatever. So they've
Right.
been in and out of the office. But it's been like 3 weeks now. So I called him up like Thursday of this last week. And I was like, "Hey, did you hear anything back from that job?" He's like, "I didn't hear anything back from that job, but guess what? I got a better job somewhere else." And I was like, "Dude, that's amazing. That's so cool." And he's like, "Yeah, like it was really like, really good." And then I just was like, "Do you want to come to the men's breakfast on Saturday?" He was like, "Well, when is it?" I was like, "It's 9 a.m. on Saturday at Awaken." And he was like, "You know what? I'm not doing anything. Yeah, I'll come."
Oh,
And
cool.
like he came and I didn't even sit with him. He actually sat with a whole different group of guys. But literally like I didn't know this guy at all, and I just was like, and I just threw to calling him once a week for whatever. I was able to build enough relationship. Where I was like, so even his own brother, who goes to our church, wasn't able to make the men's breakfast, but he came though.
Oh, that's cool.
And he was one of the gamers. And then I know that there's like 2 or 3 other people, so I'm like, I should get them all on like a text thread and be like, all of you guys are gamers. Let's get a game night going. Like like let's all sync up our computers. I don't know how it works, but
I don't know what gamers do.
I don't know what gamers do. But yeah, so
You're gonna get sucked down a rabbit hole of gaming.
yeah.
Jessica's gonna be like,
Yeah, right.
No, stop that right now.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's like, yeah, so it's just one of those things. But oh yeah, you get a comment there?
Yeah. So I don't know how we get comments back. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
So Missy said it's easier for people to hide behind a mask than to be real, especially those who have been hurt by a church.
Mm.
That's a great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, man, that's a really great point, Missy. I think that's a truth for a lot of people. I mean, you guys have experienced that. I've
Yeah.
experienced that.
Yeah.
I know so many people, and that was part of this. Part of this book was built out of that. But
yeah.
and I think that's where, like what you're talking about, making it about them and not.
Yeah.
People don't care what you know until they know that you care, right?
Right.
And that's a great way to say it. And if we go in, I just read a statistic in a book that I'm reading called The Forgotten Way by Alan Hirsch, where he said that most churches are competing for the same 40% of people in a community,
Mm.
right? And so that means that there's 60% of the community that's unreached, that are not just unreached, but like uninterested in church.
Right.
And that most churches are competing for the same 40% of people. So these are people leaving churches, going to other churches.
Mm.
And most of them, to Missy's point, are leaving because they're hurt. They don't feel like it's home anymore. Something has happened to cause them to be like, well, it's time to find a new church.
Yeah.
Some of them are just church hopping. Some of them are just church shoppers.
Yeah.
Easier to not be vulnerable with a group of people if you just keep moving. But a lot of them are leaving because of hurt, whether it's perceived hurt or a real hurt.
Right.
But it's important to note that even if it's a perceived hurt, it's still a hurt that's real to that person.
Right.
And gentleness.
Yeah.
Is important, and welcoming hospitality and grace and love and all those things allow them the ability to feel like they belong, which allows them to open vulnerability.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's unfortunately, it's like, I'm sure there's got to be a statistic somewhere, but I'm guessing that the majority of non-Christians probably were also hurt by the church, and that shaped their view of God and church.
Probably some of them, yeah.
You know, because if you talk to most people, and maybe it's just because around here.
And I don't know, like maybe hurt by the church, but probably more we show our ridiculousness. Like there's a cultural understanding. There's a cultural impression.
Yeah.
Of the church.
Yeah.
And actually Alex, who's one of our associate pastors, Pollard, Instagrammed something, a memory that she had posted on Facebook or something like that about we're so often known for what we're against and not what we're for.
Oh yeah.
And I think that there's this cultural impression, this societal impression that we're against all this stuff and we're just a people that are against.
Yeah.
And often it's not untrue, sadly.
Yeah. Right.
Instead of, we're a people that are for people. We're a people that are for Jesus. We're a people that are for love.
Right.
And we're a people that are for our neighbor and for the sojourner and for the foreigner and for the oppressed and for the widow and for the meek and for all the things that Jesus said.
Right.
And really, that's not often how it's perceived. Often we're all of these other things that are antithesis to Jesus.
Right.
But you know, I mean, we charge forward in our. Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it political.
No, I understand that what you're saying, but yeah, you know, that's what the, like, especially with your book here, and really, like, I think what we want to do going forward too is that we want to dispel these things where it's like here's what you've heard before, or here's how it was before.
Right.
Here's why that's wrong, and here's the way that we should be thinking. And because, like, you know, kind of like what we've talked about before is like authoritative rules, regulations, pounding the hammer, like, you know, that sort of thing. Christianity was
the fire and brimstone.
Yeah. That was the popular, like, right way of doing it for so long.
Right.
And then it's kind of like, oh, like, once you finally realize it, that, like, once you finally realize, like, oh wow, that is how that was, and now I see Jesus in a much different light, and wow, that's not what he was for at all. It's kind of like, it changes your whole perception of the church, and you kind of have to do a restart in a way, you know, a refresh.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we're honest, it's not the cultures or societies, it's not our society's responsibility to change their view of us. It's our responsibility to change their view of us. And I was listening to a podcast today, and the guy was talking about how he thinks that because Jesus said things like, the world hated me, so they'll hate you also. You will face trials and tribulations. that if we're not facing that stuff, if we don't feel like the world hates us,
Hmm.
then we're not authentic followers of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so we manufacture
Hmm.
all of these people that are against us. And I saw a couple.
Interesting.
I made a comment on a post stupidly. I wasn't gonna, but I did. And
Isn't that usually how it goes?
and but like some of the comments on there were not helpful, and I was like, oh, that's super, like it reads like a conservative agenda,
Right.
but it doesn't read like Jesus.
Hmm.
And a lot of the end of it was about how we're at war and there's this conflict and like we're fighting for our rights, and like, no, we're not. We're
Right.
not. There's not a culture war unless
Right.
you make a culture war. And Jesus isn't interested in culture wars. He's not. Let me be clear.
Yeah.
He's not interested in your culture war.
Hmm.
In fact, the world eventually will turn against Christians,
Right.
but they're not right now.
Right.
Because we live in a like most of what you're facing in America is the fact that we live in a pluralistic. They're not trying to prevent us from meeting together in church.
Right.
They're not shutting down church, because you
Right.
also can't go to a Guns N' Roses. Are they still touring? Is Guns N' Roses still touring? I don't know.
Maybe.
You can't go to a Katy Perry concert right now,
Right.
because the same reasons you can't gather in 150 person masses at a church.
Right.
Everyone's singing, and it's more about whether you believe in COVID or not. It's more about that than it is they're trying to shut down our churches. We won't be. No.
Yeah.
No, you like, yeah, but they get to protest. Well, there's problems with that too.
Yeah.
Sure. So it's not war on church. It's
Yeah.
anyway. So when we stop acting that way,
Yeah.
people start taking us serious.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, and our impressions start changing. That's my mom just texted. Nothing to do with the show, because my mom doesn't watch the show. So,
oh man, but yeah, no, it's so good. It's like, man, so I was reading Ecclesiastes, and one of the things that it says is nothing's new under the sun. It's just meaningless and that sort of thing. And
although,
yeah,
I would argue,
yeah,
I'm a podcast guy, so another podcast I was listening to, and I had to Google it.
Yeah.
There's this guy in Europe, and he was in a, like, part of the park was like closed, the optional park.
Oh, okay.
So like he was nude sunbathing.
Okay.
And he wasn't like this portly guy. He was just kind of this average body guy.
Yeah.
And this wild boar came and like stole his bag.
What?
And probably thinking it was food or something, and took off with this little piglet. I think one or two little piglets chasing after it.
Oh no.
And this guy's like, "That's my laptop. I need that. Like, all my work's on it."
Oh no.
And he starts chasing this pig. Like, he had to make this decision. Do I get? And he chases, and someone captured a picture. And the guy on the podcast was like, "I'm willing to bet that picture's never been taken before."
Yeah.
With all the cameras in everybody's pocket and millions of pictures a day that are taken.
Yeah.
I bet you that picture's never been taken. So he brought up the nothing's new under the sun. And he was like, except that picture is new under the sun.
That's funny. That's so good.
And I Googled it, because he was like, it's safe to Google. It was a Christian podcast. He was like, it's safe to Google.
Yeah.
And so I Googled it, and it's hilarious. Like, and the guy got his laptop back. He chased this pig into the woods. This wild boar like dropped the bag, and then he got it back anyway. But anyway,
gosh.
New under the sun.
Yeah, no, that's funny. So like New Under the Sun, it's kind of like, in a way, I know we not necessarily, but in a way, you can almost get your same current events just by reading through the Bible. It's like a lot of times you can just continue to study God's word and just know that, like, the orphans are always going to be there, the homeless are always going to be there, the oppression is always going to be there,
right.
But we also will always have a call to help those.
Our response is always the same.
It's always the same.
The Bible is I would argue, and maybe, no, because there's philosophy and stuff like that, but like the Bible was written not for a specific culture in a specific time.
Right.
It spans culture and time.
Is living.
It meets the need of every culture and time.
Right.
And answers a question for every culture and time.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, and that's not to mean like we take in, we're like, well, clearly this is written where America's God's new chosen people. Like,
no.
Spoiler alert. No, we're not.
Yeah, exactly.
The people who confess Jesus are God's chosen people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But there's a little bit more to it than simple confession.
Yep.
You might get to heaven.
When I really enjoyed, so something that Adam said this weekend, so Pastor Adam, which I don't think you got to hear yet, but
I haven't. Yeah.
One of the most profound statements, I really appreciate it. He said, in every other world religion, it's man chasing after God. And he said, it's all about pleasing God, chasing after God, doing what you can to be right in God's eyes. But in Christianity, it's the only religion where God is chasing you.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
I'm sure, yeah. And so I just thought, wow, that changes everything because...
And not just man chasing God, man trying to appease God.
Exactly.
So like there's human sacrifices, there's ceremonies to get rain, and it's all manipulating the gods to meet the needs of man.
Yeah.
Whereas God, the whole of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this. The thing that always I chuckle at when people are like, "Oh, look, the Old Testament's full of God's wrath and anger and angry teenager God," and then God matured and came down as Jesus and hippie loving. But the whole of the Old Testament is, I'll be your God, be my people.
Right.
Be my people. I'll be your God.
Right.
You don't need a king. I will be your God. I will take care of you. I'll fight your battles for you. Just come to me.
Right.
And it's God pursuing the Israelites the entire Old Testament.
Yeah.
And then we get to the New Testament, and it's God pursuing his people.
Yep.
It's God going out and finding his people.
Right.
And saying, come, and I'll show you how to do this thing that I created you for.
And that's one of the things where, like, so, and I kind of think about this with my job, for instance. It's like, I love my job. Like, I love working for the insurance company. But here's the thing is that no matter how well I do, or like, sorry, I was waving to a couple people. No matter how well I do, how fast I work, how hard I work, how many hours I put in, there will never be a time where my work goes, well, you've done everything and we can't coach you anymore.
Right.
It's always like, hey, good job improving. Let's improve more.
Right.
Hey, great job doing that. Let's make it better. And it's always, you're always chasing. You're just always chasing. They call it the rat race, right? You're always chasing the goal. You're always chasing the most efficient way to do it and that sort of thing. And then along with that, all the different policies and procedures change, and then you have to adapt to the new change and that sort of thing. And that's what it's like to be in other religions, is that you always are chasing, and it's always not good enough. You can always improve. Where like what Adam was saying is like, God's like, I've accepted you right where you're at. You don't have to do anything else. I love you fully 100%, and I'm chasing after you, and I will relentlessly continue to chase after you. And that's where we talk about the 99 and the 1. It's like, I will come after the 1. The rest of the 99, they're okay. I'm going to come after the 1. It changes.
And the beauty of it is
everything. Yeah.
He's coming after the 1 all at the same time.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Everybody's the 1.
Everyone is the 1.
Everyone's the 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are those of us, like, at times we are the 99.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But everyone is the 1.
Right.
And he's coming after the 1 at all the time. And your responsibility in that is response. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Whereas you have to figure out in all these other religions, and I don't want to I don't want to suggest that that we shouldn't be lifelong learners. We should absolutely, like, your job is, I think that's the problem with any jobs. We should all not have jobs.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like in our marriage, we're always trying to learn. We're always trying to learn our spouse. I heard a great quote one time that said, your spouse is not a book that you read once and put down.
Yeah.
They're a violin that you spend your life trying to master and learn.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important mentality when it comes to relationships. Is we're always trying to learn. When it comes to our skill, our hobbies, the things that we enjoy and love, that we're always trying to learn and be better. But inside of Christianity, we are always trying to learn and be better, but not outside of relationship.
Yeah.
And not like our only responsibility is response. And it's in that response that we get to experience all that stuff that comes with being in a good relationship. And I had a conversation with someone a few weeks ago that was like, but why do I have to change? But why do I have to change?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's not about having to change. It's about, man, you're so good to me, and I want to reciprocate that. I want to give that back to you.
Yeah.
And there will be things in your life that you're like, I don't need that, or that hurts you. I would stop. And he was a single guy, and I was just like, when you marry your wife, don't change.
Yeah.
When she comes and says, this, I don't like when you do this. I don't like when you stay up till 4 a.m. and play video games because we have things, and now we have a kid.
Yeah.
Don't change.
Yeah.
Don't change.
Right.
But if you love her, you'll be like, oh, yeah. Is there a time that I can play that's not, like, if I stayed up on Friday nights until 2 a.m., is that okay? Or there's compromise there.
Right.
And his response was like, God doesn't compromise. I was like,
Dang.
man, God lets you get away with so much.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I love.
He doesn't compromise his values, but man, does he let you get away with stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, I love the violin. I love the violin analogy because here's what's really interesting about violins is that if you just go to, like, Walmart and you buy a violin and it breaks, you can throw it away.
You're out.
It's
$20.
Like, yeah, exactly. But if
can you buy violins at Walmart? Probably.
I think so. Yeah. But if you have a broken Stradivarius in your hands, a broken one is worth $250,000, if not $1 million, sometimes.
Are you serious?
A Stradivarius.
Oh, I'll never own a Stradivarius.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, literally only. But like, even broken, it can
still
be worth up to $1 million.
Yeah.
And so, do we see ourselves as Stradivariuses or the Walmart brand of violins, right? And
honestly, I think we often see ourselves as Walmart.
Exactly.
Able to be thrown away.
Right. And God is like, no, you're a Stradivarius. Even broken, you're still worth way more than you'll ever know. And so it's interesting because I watched this.
And the beauty part in that is, and I'm a master repairer of Stradivariuses.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it was so cool because there was this guy who it was a broken violin, and he handed it to like this lady, and she was just like looking at it like, he goes, do you know what that is? And she's like, it's a broken violin. And he was like, that's a Stradivarius. He's like, that's broken. That's worth $250,000 in your hands right now. And then she was like, and then like all of a sudden it became like almost heavy because she was like, I can't drop this. I don't want to make it, but I don't want to break it more. And it's kind of like, it's so interesting how like we will perceive
perspective change.
We perceive ourselves as, these crappy violins that are just broken and God's out $20. But God's like, no. Like, you have no idea what the worth you are, even broken. Could you imagine how much you are renewed?
Right.
Like,
that's great.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
That adds lots of different levels to layers. And yeah, that's good. So we're coming up on our time.
All right.
So we haven't talked about when we're going to come back because we got to do some planning and some recording.
Yeah.
So I don't know, a month-ish.
Yeah.
What are we in? It's August.
It's August. It's like halfway through August.
It's August 17th. It's the middle of August. That's crazy.
I know, right?
I'm back at work.
That sucks, man.
It does. Only because I believe that people shouldn't have jobs.
I'm with you. Yeah.
We should all just be able to do whatever we want and make a living wage.
Yeah.
And be able to fish and golf and read and hammock.
There was a point where like the
I'm not a socialist either. I just think we shouldn't have to have jobs.
There was a point where like the Democratic Party was talking about paying us like $6,000 a month for like 6 months, and I was like, I'm ready to quit my job.
You have my vote. I'm not even a registered Democrat.
There you go. Yeah.
So a month, like maybe mid-September. That'll give us some time to plan.
Yeah.
We were just like right before we hit live.
Yeah.
We were talking about potential other projects that might come back, or that might hit the scene. I want to be a media mogul.
Yeah, there you go.
So I started a media group.
Yeah.
Thing. I didn't really. I just bought the URL, but it will be an LLC eventually.
Like, yeah.
Or a corporation. A corporation, you have to have a board. It'll be an LLC, sole proprietor. But that like it has to include other things. So we have some things on the thing. You can still text questions if you'd like. We're gonna try and keep that active.
Yep.
Yeah. And yeah, we'll be back in about a month with topics.
Yeah.
With things.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So make sure you definitely be sending us your ideas of what you want to hear and what you want us to go over, and we'll start putting together a playlist.
It's got to be theology type stuff. Well, like church and I mean the thing is called Folding Chair Theology. So just something that if you're going to bring up a topic, it can't be. It can be relevant to today. It can't be like, but what do you think of this car or who it? I don't know. I don't know anything about cars. I don't know anything about cars.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then what we'll do is we'll announce our coffee winner.
Well, the only person that commented in any meaningful way was Missy. So, Missy, congratulations. You won a $10 gift card to the coffee shop of your choice.
Probably Dutch Bros, I'm guessing.
Is it Dutch Bros?
Yeah.
Okay. You can let Justin know, and that'll be that.
There you go.
I'm just going to call it because I don't think that we'll get any other text before Thursday. This will come out as an episode on Thursday.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we do have other ones, we'll just do a drawing. Missy will get her card. We'll do another drawing. If Missy wins, she'll get 2 cards. Whatever.
There you go.
Oh, you're out $20.
Exactly. Perfect.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right. Well, we will be seeing you, or you'll be hearing from us
in a month.
Soon, in a month, and we'll continue to try to interact on the social medias. And
yeah. We won't we're not just gonna shut down for a month. And do nothing. So, and maybe we'll hop on individually and do some live stuff on.
Yeah.
Whatever.
That sounds good.
Cool.
We'll do that. So awesome. Well, again, this is Justin Mercier and Bruce Pagano for Folding Chair Theology. We appreciate you interacting with us, and we will be talking to you soon.
All
right. Well, you got to go all the way up there and hit the button. See you later. Thank you for listening to Folding Chair Theology. You can follow Bruce on multiple social media platforms at bpags2, as well as Justin Mercier on Instagram at JustinMercier13. Additionally, you can check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Folding Chair Theology. Until then, keep unfolding God's Word each and every day.